Welcome to Born for This. I'm Dr. Johanna, a holistic doctor, a mother, and someone whose entire world changed the day our son was born with a condition I had never heard of.
And I'm Peter, entrepreneur and father. This isn't just our story, it's a space for every family who's ever been blindsided by a diagnosis, walked into an operating room with their heart in their throat, or had to parent through the unthinkable. So in this episode, we are exploring the impact of having a child with medical needs on their siblings. So when did you first realize that this wasn't just about one child's diagnosis, but this was going to affect our whole family?
Pretty early on, I actually wasn't concerned when Silas was very firstborn because he was a itty bitty baby and our other son was just super excited to have a baby and a brother. And so there was no direct impact at that time. I think that the first really direct impact that made it real for me was when we had scheduled that first consult with the specialty center in Texas, because of course there was a time difference between Texas and Florida. They only do these consults in the evening time. And because of that, we had to get childcare for both of our kids just to have this consult. So that was the first little piece for me that brought me in and thought, okay, this obviously is just not going to be an impact on you and I as the parents and the caregivers. This is going to have an impact on our oldest son too, because we are, especially after that consult, knowing that we were going to go with those surgeons, we have to navigate this space of traveling from Florida to Texas. And just a little back information, we had never left our oldest son. We had always been with him. We hadn't even taken a night away to ourselves. And when Silas was born, our oldest was just turned 3. They are 3 years and 7 days apart. So even at 3, we had never left him. He was always home with us. That's just kind of how it was and how it went. So to think about having to go through this process and possibly leave him, uh, and then also well, what if we bring him? How is that going to impact him? Was just one of those spiraling moments of extreme, moments of being overwhelmed.
Yeah, I don't think I was quick enough to start worrying about that at that exact moment. It took me a little bit longer, more like when we were getting ready for the first trip or maybe even during the first trip was when I started just seeing that, okay, this is a bigger deal because we're packing for him and we're bringing him. And I think we had discussed maybe not taking him, but again, we were lucky to have really good family support and we knew his grandparents were going to be there. So that kind of eased my mind about that. But I think it got a lot heavier when healing processes started, and for me that's when I started to think about our older son.
Yeah, I mean, we did navigate the space of trying to decide if we were going to leave him in Florida with someone or if we were going to take him with us. And I do want to take some time and just give a massive thank you and shout out to my parents, Bebong and Pop Pop. That's what our kiddos call my mom and dad, because without them, the travel, the taking care of our oldest would have, I think, pretty much been impossible. I don't know how we would have navigated it without them. They were amazing through this time. It just happened to be that the area in Texas where the specialty clinic is relatively close, an hour away from my dad's parents. So they had created this whole thing that they were gonna do. They met us in Texas. They drove. I don't know why they drove, but they drove. Oh, because they spent more time there. They drove from Florida to Texas. So they took all of the comfort things that we wanted to take for both of our kids, because that is one thing I think that helped us with our oldest is keeping his routine as close to the same as possible. So they took additional things that we wouldn't normally take if we were just flying. They had created an agenda when they were there, like on the surgery day, they're going to take our oldest to the family farm, and he was gonna play with all the farm animals and the snakes that are there, like, just things that, like, that was so fun to him, and even to this day, if he talks about Texas, he's like, "I wanna go back to Texas, and I wanna go to the farm." He thinks that's why we went. So, in that regard, I'm like, "Okay, like, we can check that box." So, like, we won that in that regard. So, I am very, very thankful that we had them, and I'm also very thankful for your mom because we had great support when we got back, and because they don't live my parents don't live here, they live in Panama, the country, so when they had to return, your mom was able to help us on the other side of that, so, yeah, I mean, it's just kinda crazy when you sit down and you, like, relive it to think about everything that did happen. I mean, our oldest was 3, like, so he was just at a point that he didn't understand any of the stuff that was going on. He was just excited that he had this new baby brother, and he loved him to death, so we didn't over explain any of the information to him. We were just I mean, I just remember telling him, like, "Silas has a boo-boo, and we have to go to Texas, and the doctors are gonna fix it." And that's what we stuck with, just super easy and general.
Yeah, I think he was at a pretty good age because he was easily distracted. And he kind of avoided a lot of it, in my opinion, and he just stayed busy at that age. As I'm sure anybody with a 3-year-old knows, just super busy, rambunctious little boy running around.
Yeah, I don't feel like we noticed any behavioral changes with him through that time. Like, I don't feel like he was, like, acting out or anything like that, and in fact, like, I would say, like, sometimes that does happen just by having a second child, bringing another child into the family dynamic, but we were blessed in that regard, like, he was excited that Silas was there. He was very helpful and loving, and then, I mean, he's a kid, so, like, there were times that he wanted the attention too, but I don't feel like any of that was in reference or as a backlash to what was going on with Silas, even when we were doing the travel and everything like that. I mean, we kept him busy, like, thank God, like, my parents kept him so busy. I don't even think he
And,
had a moment to think about it.
and he always sees travel as a really fun, exciting thing. So it was, I think, a little bit easier for us because he has done some traveling in the past. So he related traveling to fun. Everything leading up to the first surgery and past that was fine. Then when it came back down to the healing process, I was worried about how he was going to react to seeing the recovery process. And most of the times he kind of just hid and didn't look, from what I remember about. He wasn't willing to look at the boo-boo, as we called it.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely retracted in that regard, like, he didn't wanna see it, he didn't wanna be around it, which, I mean, ultimately was fine. How that will fully impact him later, if it will, is to be determined, like, I'm not sure, because I mean, I know things in your childhood can come back up later, so and when it does, like, if it does, we'll handle that, but I think that's just kinda a natural response for the age that he was. So, you know, I think overall he handled it really, really well, and we tried it like, one of the biggest things is we tried to keep his routine through the whole, like, 18-month process that we were doing this. We tried to keep his routine when we traveled, like, I mean, again, like, every time that we went, each time my parents drove to Texas. So, that way they, like, took extra things, extra comforts, and we were able to really, like, create as much of home that we had inside of where we were staying in Texas, and I think that was, like, very helpful, normal reading, normal, like, loveys, like, all the things that they just gravitated toward in our daily life, which was nice.
Yeah, I think, to kind of piggyback on that, that just this all comes back to the support systems because, which we think is one of the most important things, is even when we got back and we were in the healing process too, he was still busy and he still stuck to his routines. He gets to go to his mama's house all the time and cook with her and different things while we were tending to Silas. And I think that's what made his journey through that process a lot easier than it could have been. It was just all the support that we had throughout every step of the way.
Yeah, I don't know what it would have been like if we didn't have that support and we were left by just the 2 of us to navigate all of that. I mean, obviously, our experience and our story would be very different with him in that regard, and I do feel like if we didn't have the support, he may have acted out more and things like that. So everybody's different, right, on, like, their family dynamic and different things on, like, how they can get that support or not, but also, I think it's important to being okay to ask for help, and that's one reason, that we're here too is, like, how can we help you navigate that space? And there were times I definitely felt like the struggle and the pull between being this medical mama for Silas, but also a quote unquote normal mom for both of them inside of that moment. There was a time that I remember after his third surgery, which it was harder to go out and do normal things with him because he had a different type of catheter. So it just was harder to do diaper changes on your own. And I still wanted to create as much normalcy for them inside of that healing timeframe because it takes weeks for him to heal. And I went to the park and they were having a great time. They were like interacting with other kids and they were playing with these monster trucks. And in that moment, I'm like, this feels good. This feels so normal. Like these kids have no idea like that Silas is healing from this journey that we've been on. But then he pooped, of course, while we were there. And the thought of trying to change his diaper was just like it was too much because anyway, it's just can be a little bit messy and there's Aquaphor and like the catheter sticking to stuff. And so I had to pull Dakota and out of that moment of playing and having a great time and say like, "Hey buddy, like I we got to go home so dada can help me change Silas's diaper." And he handled it well, I'm as well as you can as, like, a four-year-old being taken away from super cool, fun toys and a fun moment with fun friends. But then, that made me inside like, "Ugh," I just wanted to, like, shrink and cry because I just wanted his life and their life to be as normal as possible, but here was this, like, quote, unquote, like, "minor inconvenience" that I had to change the dynamic, and you do what you have to do for family, and I think that's one thing that we have been able to teach him from a very young age. Um, yeah, to just make sure that, like, we're supporting family throughout the years as well.
Well, and you felt like you had to protect him from as much of those inconveniences as possible to make him have what felt like a normal situation and make him feel like his brother was normal and everything was good. You did want to protect him from that stuff. So anytime you had to interfere anything or interrupt anything, you felt that.
Yeah, because our ultimate goal with I mean, the reason we made the decisions we made with Silas is to protect him, and then the reasons and the decisions we made with our oldest was to protect him inside this moment, so we were doing our best to protect both children, but in 2 very, very different ways, which is, like, when you think about it, makes my brain hurt and spin because there's a lot going on in those moments.
Do you feel like that affected your relationship with our older son throughout this process, or do you feel like you were closer to him because of it, or do you think it took you away from him?
I mean, as a mom, I struggled with this when we were inside the moments of being in Texas with the surgeries because, again, thankfully, my parents typically took him on those surgery days, but there was so much anxiety the day of the surgery because they have to fast, obviously. So, like, the moment you wake up, like, your whole focus is on the child that has to go into surgery because you have to keep them occupied and they're upset because they don't understand, and because of that and being, like, the mom and the one that both of the kids want most of the time, it was hard because I didn't wanna feel like I was pushing our oldest to the side, like, I needed support in those moments so, like, he felt loved and cared for because I knew I didn't have the capacity to do both and keep a level head about it. And then on the other side of, like, obviously going through the surgery day, like, you are in the back of your head, like, thinking about him, like, I'm very thankful that he was with family and not with, like, a random sitter that we had to find or something like that, like, I was very happy about that because I didn't have to worry too much, but you're still, like, worried about your baby that's in surgery, but then you're worried about your other bigger baby that, isn't with you, that's completely used to being around you 24/7. And then you get to the post-op, and that's a whole thing, right? Because they're coming child's coming off of anesthesia, and the first time, I would say Silas handled it well. The second and third time was much harder when he came off of it, and there were times that he was up in the middle of the night, and he was really inconsolable, like, and I was just, like, "Oh my gosh," like, "I hope he's not waking up Dakota, and I don't want, to handle both of these kids in the middle of the night when I'm also really tired and just, like, mentally exhausted." So, internally, there was a lot more stress going on than probably I allowed to be portrayed. Hopefully, he didn't really pick up on that stuff, but you know how kids are. They do to an extent. But I do feel like over time, this also did deepen the relationship that I had with our oldest because he is I mean, the one thing, he is so caring and loving, and it is interesting how your children's, like, characteristics are, and I do feel like there's a reason that he was born first and our oldest, and then Silas born second as our youngest, because if the dynamic was switched, I think we woulda had more, like, of those emotional outlash, like, moments, and it would have been more of a struggle just based on their personalities. I think our oldest, like, is very loving, very caring, and does understand in certain moments when I'm hurting and need support, and and that's helpful, and that has strengthened our relationship to an extent too because, I tried to spend extra time with him and special time with him, which we should do anyway, but, I had tried to make some special moments for just us together, so he felt like all the attention wasn't always going to Silas, that we were able to, like, also put attention on him one-on-one, and he felt that love and security from us.
Well, I think it worked because he does not seem to bring any of that up. I think if anything, he just talks about Texas and Texas being fun. So I think that we were able to distract him successfully.
In Texas, those were some of the highlights of his life. So, like, even though we were going through the shit and we were sitting in it and it was hard, that was the first time he saw snow. That wasn't fun for us because our flights got canceled and it was just like a nightmare and whatever. But he first time he got to see snow, he first time he got to go to a farm and he was with cows and horses and I don't even know what else. I know there were snakes at one point, and he got to go to some really cool things, like a town that was made for kids, and he got to, like, have a job and make money and spend it. Like, he got to do some really cool stuff that he remembers to this day.
Yeah, so he doesn't bring surgery up at all, but he will still bring up those fun things. So
I'm glad that is what he definitely remembers. Yeah, it's interesting to see the change in the dynamic of it all and trying to navigate and juggle it all.
we can't go back and undo the hard parts, but we can let the moments teach us how to love more with presence, more softness, and more honesty.
I think that quote is, like, so important because if you've ever been through anything stressful, you get so caught up in that immediate moment, and it's not until later when you're through it that you can almost step back and look at it from the top and be like, "Oh, wow, okay, yes, that was very large, that was very big, very hard, but now that I've been through it, like, if I could do it different, how would I do it different?" And I think that, reflecting, it's like, "Okay, did I really spend as much time with our oldest as I needed to? Like, did I really connect with him as much as we needed to? Would I have changed anything inside of those moments?" And I would say overall, like, I think we did a really good a really good job. I do.
And I think you have to just not think too far into it because we were also in fight or flight or survival mode. We were just surviving and trying to do the best we could. And you had the ability to lean on family. And when you have that ability to lean on family, you can focus on what needs to be focused on, which was at this point our youngest and getting through the surgeries. I was super thankful that on surgery days, all we had to focus on was him because that's what needed to happen. So I think I think it all worked out how it was supposed to work out. And I don't think that there's any lasting scars or anything that came out of it. That are massive that still impact us today. I'm sure that won't be the case for everybody in every situation, but for us in this situation, it turned out to be, um, it's obviously easier after the fact to say it was not that big of a deal, but during this situation, it was a huge deal.
And, I'm very, like, really looking forward to talking to other caregivers that have been through this, like, even with different conditions, because our situation was very different. We didn't have to go to a hospital, we went to a surgical center, so at the end of his surgery, once he woke up from anesthesia and he checked all the boxes, we were able to go back to our Airbnb. Now, if he was inside of a hospital, that may not have been the case. We may have had to stay for those 24 to 48 hours for monitoring or something, and I know other kids obviously have different conditions, so the requirements are gonna be different, and I look forward to sharing some conversations with other caregivers on, how did that affect their family dynamic with the other kiddos? Like, how did they navigate that so we can just provide more support across the board? Like, I feel like our situation, like, and, like, just to be generalized, like, was relatively, like, easy in that regard, like, with the support that we had and how it was able to be handled and managed. I know that's not gonna be the case for everyone, so I wanna be able to connect with other caregivers in that regard and also share that experience because I know that there's gonna be instances where it was much harder. And again, like, if you zoom back out once you've been through it and you can look back down, what advice could you give somebody and other caregivers to help them navigate this space a little bit easier than when you did, because I think part of, like, this whole movement is that if we can band together in, like, a really positive, loving way, like, that's the information that's gonna help other families. That's the information that's gonna be impactful to them to help change their lives and influence their lives versus this whole, like, black and white of, like, "You gotta do it this way or that way." Like, no, like, what can we learn and teach others when they are willing to listen and want that information? So I think that, like, I'm, like, super, pumped about having that opportunity here soon as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to bring a lot of good stories and hopefully a lot of help to a lot of people going through a lot of different situations with their children, and hopefully make people feel comfortable and like there are answers and there are guides out there to help you navigate some of these spaces.
Yeah, I mean, to all the parents and caregivers out there still juggling both, you are doing enough. I'm sure you don't hear that enough, but you're doing enough even on the days when it doesn't feel like it. Just remember, like, every time you're showing up and making those decisions to the best of your ability for your kiddos, you are doing enough and you're showing the love and compassion that you have for them. And of course, if they're younger, maybe even if they're older, they may not understand inside those moments, but all you can do is make the best choices and the best that you can in those situations. So you're doing it. Good work.
Thanks again for listening, everybody. If this resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. What do these experiences do to your other children and to the siblings that were going through this if you went through something similar? What did you learn through it? Message us or share your stories with us. Let's talk about the part of medical parenting no one sees, the part where your heart lives in two places at once.
For sure. I want to hear all about that because I want to bring some better awareness and support. So reach out. If you are listening to this in a hospital room or sitting in your car or scrolling through podcasts trying to find a sign that you are not alone, this is it.
We don't have all the answers, but we do have a story. And we know that healing begins when stories are told.
You were never meant to carry this alone, and I hope you remember this one thing. You were born for this.
If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs it. If you've got a story of your own, we'd be honored to hear it. Visit our website at borntforthisstories.com and click the Share My Story button.
This is just the beginning. We are so glad you are here.